Okay, so one final session for today, stimulating and measuring creativity. We have 5 speakers in the session, and we will start off, as for the other sessions, with a dialogue between Bob Tkach and Hao Zhu. And Bob Tkach was awarded the Marconi Prize actually in Bologna in 2009, so 4 years ago. We had another chance to host the Marconi Prize celebration in Bologna. And he was a co-winner with Andrew Cropley, which you met in the previous session, again for the dense wavelength division multiplexing system. So we'll leave it to Bob to talk about his own experience and ideas about creative thinking.
Very good. Thank you, Giovanni. So like my longtime coworker, Andy Cropley, I also missed the morning session, but I did see the last one, so I got a little bit of a flavor of the conference and very interesting topics. I did have some experiences on my way to the conference that put me in mind of thinking about creativity and the topic of this conference. Yesterday morning I was in the Dolomites, so and only came here in the evening. And the Dolomites are very beautiful, obviously. The mountains in Italy, I think, are perhaps the most beautiful in the world. But the relevant part of this is how I got here from the Dolomites. I drove a car from Cortina initially via many cities and came here. And we had, so we drove on the Autostrada for the mountain roads first, and then the Autostrada to Modena. And then in Modena I had dinner with a friend, and we finished dinner in the Italian style, maybe at 11:30. Closed the restaurant, and then we got in the car to drive here, and trying to use GPS and various technology to arrive at the hotel, which is maybe 50 meters from the statue of Neptune. So it's right in the center of the city. So trying to drive in the center of the city into the center of the city in Italy, I think had not appreciated how difficult it is. And in fact, I had not appreciated how creative Italian driving is in general, both on the Autostrada and coming into the city. And so I had observed Italian driving all day, but at night I had a laboratory to try to practice some Italian driving and being creative in the interpretation of the laws and the directions of travel on the streets and whether or not something is really a pedestrian zone or not, which was explained to me by a friend once that if it's really a pedestrian zone, there are concrete pillars and you cannot go in. A sign that says you cannot go in is merely advisory. But anyway, so that was how I feel I got into the frame of mind for a creativity conference. My partner here, Hao Zhu, is going to have some introductory remarks on this session on stimulating and measuring creativity. He received the Marconi Young Scholar Award in 2008, the year before I received the award, for his research work in data communications and storage. Obviously, he demonstrated great creativity in his research, but he also has demonstrated great creativity in how he has applied his technical background to now working in the financial industry for PIMCO in trading, and he also advises technical companies on how to approach their business models. So I think he's very well positioned to think about how creativity can lead you in directions that sometimes are at right angles to the ones you start on. And without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Hao.
Thank you, Bob. So as an investment manager now, like we always like to talk about something as a next billion-dollar question. But for the measuring creativity, it is truly a billion-dollar question. But it started as like a pretty $10,000, $20,000 questions, like when I was a kid. When I was in China, I was from China. So when China kids go to school, they always have a lot of like brain teasers, IQ tests. And the ones who score high, they don't have to pay tuition. And the ones who score the worst, they have to pay like all the tuition of the others. So I was given some kind of a math quiz for my like a grade school entrance exam, like something is called some traditional problem called chicken and rabbit, like a math problem. So the problem was like this. So there are some chicken and the rabbits in a cage, and someone counted 28 heads in total and 76 feet in total. So how many rabbits are there? How many chickens are there? So I didn't answer that question, and my parents ends up paying a lot for the tuition. So, yeah, but in retrospect, it's probably not a very creative question at all, because how stupid would the counter be if he cannot recognize chicken's head and from the rabbit's head? So it will be easier if he can count a chicken and rabbit separately. But it's like more like a linear math equation, linear equation questions for preschool kids, and try to evaluate their creativity. So that if you count it, like how many hundreds of millions of kids there are in China, it surely adds up to like a multi-billion-dollar question. So how to improve the process so that you can select truly creative kids into the best schools probably is something like I look forward to get out probably from this session as also the next few sessions. And also, as an extension, like for my current work, we work on trading. So I work in trading treasury bonds, some foreign government bonds, and also interest rate derivatives. So we are also looking for very creative traders who can think about creative solutions, like when Obama make a speech, like how his speech is tied up to the price of treasury bonds, and when Berlusconi like made a move, like how would the price of Italian bonds go up and go down. So in the end, like we ends up doing the same thing as what the teacher for grade school they did over like probably 20 years ago. We gave brain teasers to all the entering traders. So we asked the same question, try to see how creative they are. So yeah, so that's something which just tells you like mirroring creativity is to the industry. It's truly some problem that need to be solved, and something which has huge value, and if there's any research that can help us in our recruiting truly creative traders, I would be very happy to adopt that. And also the other topic out of this session is how to stimulate the creativity, and how to arrange your workplace so that you can get the most productivity and creativity out of your employees. That's also a very important question. So for us, I think we, as an investment firm, we are the second largest investment firm with 2 trillion assets under management. So we have thought about the problem for many, many years and made many attempts. The first one we thought about is how to arrange the trade floor. So we move around seats of different traders, and sometimes like when one trader we think he is creative, we place him in the center. When he is not as creative, we move him out of the center. So it's like, but now in the end we have some kind of solution. So it's we have a chief investment officer. He's sitting. We arrange the trading floor so that he is always sitting in the center of the trading floor, and followed by the most liquid products first. So for my product, treasury bonds, they are one of the most liquid assets in the world. So I also got the benefit to sit near to the chief investment officer, and then you have different layers like mortgage-backed securities. And also probably the farthest away will be short-term bonds, which do not change price at all, like for several days, because interest rate is 0.01%. It can change from 0.01 to 0.02, but people don't care. So that's how we thought about this, and we made a lot of experiments. And in the end, we found this is significantly increases the productivity, because whenever something happens, like for example, treasury bond, the price, we have 100 billion treasury bonds, and when it moves 1%, we lose or win $1 billion. So when it moves 1%, then the chief investment officer will shout, "What's happening?" And from the rates desk, because we are in the center, we can shout back, "Oh, Obama is making a speech again, and Berlusconi has made something like he's in trouble again, like something." so he can get the information and adjust the portfolio instantly. So that's how my experience about how important the problem of mirroring creativity and also stimulating creativity through the physical workplace has been. And we have 5 speakers. They will each talk about their research in this area. So let's welcome them, and I look forward to their presentations.
Thank you very much for an excellent opening of the session. So now we start with Maria Chiara Colucci. She's a colleague at the University of Bologna in the management department and an expert in social structural explanations of creativity as applied to fashion. So we go back to this core-periphery dynamic that already Simone has described previously, but now we don't talk about the Hollywood film industry anymore, but the field of fashion, which for Italy, for sure, is a very important application.
But this is a French designer.
Oh, French designers, okay. Microphone.
Thank you, Sergio. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Maria Chiara Colucci. My colleagues are Gino Cattani and Simone Ferriani. What I'm going to present is, can you hear me? Is the present state of an ongoing research. The objective of this work is to explain why peripheral players sometimes succeed beyond expectations. So in this case, we want to explain how the periphery can be a stimulus for creativity. And our research question is what mechanism can help peripheral players break through the reputational hierarchies of cultural fields. We consider the field of the haute couture in Paris in the 20th century that was regarded as a highly creative field where actors struggled for recognition, and we used the case history of Gabrielle Chanel. We decided, given the heterogeneity of the audience, we decided to skip the theoretical background, but let me just say that as a background for this research, in our approach, creativity embodies 2 crucial dimensions, the production of novelty and the recognition of this novelty by some audience. We also embrace a systems view of creativity that was clearly recalled by Professor NC this morning. And finally, our social field is characterized by a core-periphery structure that was presented by Simone yesterday. We sought for a case that could reveal an actor, a creator transition from the periphery to the core of his social field. We used an historical case study, and we relied on multiple historical sources. Gabrielle Chanel. Why Gabrielle Chanel? Gabrielle Chanel was a very important personality of the past century. She was compared by André Malraux to De Gaulle and Picasso. She was the only fashion designer to appear on the famous Time magazine list of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century. And George Bernard Shaw described her as one of the 2 most influential women of the past century, and the other one is Marie Curie. Chanel innovation was a real revolution in fashion design. Yesterday, Martin Cooper said that a revolution changes the behavior of people in a meaningful way. Chanel innovation helped to change the behavior of women in a meaningful way. Women were looking for emancipation in those years, as I will explain later. She closed an era of fashion and launched a new era of fashion. She completely transformed the female silhouette. She shortened dresses, revealed ankles, freed the waists, eliminated corsets, cut the hair and bronzed the skin. So she also proposed a new fashion aesthetic. In addition, she was considered as a highly creative in the use of new materials. She introduced humble materials in the haute couture, such as the machine-knit jersey. A famous fashion critic said that the Chanel style has everything to do with elegance, but is founded on elements once considered foreign to it: comfort, ease, and practicality. Consider that when Chanel started making clothes, fashion was very behind the times, and it was very difficult to modernize the 20th century. Established players were Charles Frederick Worth, Jacques Doucet, and Paul Poiret. As you can see, her designs were completely, radically different, but this difference should be evaluated not only in terms of an evident different design, but also the difference is in the concept, in the message carried by these clothing. As Salvador Dali, a friend of Chanel, said, Chanel always dressed like the strong, independent maid she had dreamed of being. And a famous fashion critic said her style's philosophy had to do with the symbolic power of the clothing. What is important, given the objective of our work, is to show to understand her peripheral origins, and how this peripheral period has helped her creativity. Her life was very, very dense of events. I don't have the time here to discuss it in details, so I will just focus on the milestones of her life. She was born in Saumur in the country, and she was the illegitimate daughter of a laundress and a traveling paddler. When she was 12, her mother died, and her father sent Chanel to an orphanage at Aubazine. Then she became the mistress of, she was taken in as a charity case. That meant that she slept in a heated dormitory, and she had meals at separate tables. Then she became the mistress of two wealthy men that financed her activity first as a millionaire and then as a fashion designer. She introduced her innovation just before the First World War and during the First War, but she was able in 1916 to pay back Boy Capel for his loan, and this was such an achievement for a woman in the first decade of the 20th century. From 1916, she would be completely financially independent. Then she starts to associate with avant-garde artists in 1919. She launched her famous iconic perfume, Chanel No. 5, and starting from the 20s, she's in the core. She has already approached the core of the field. In the 20s, she collaborates with the performing arts field, in particular with Jean Cocteau and Sergei Diaghilev, that Stoyan yesterday presented, the famous founder of the Ballet Russe, that were the point of intersection of all the avant-garde arts at the time. In 1925, the Exposition des Arts Décoratifs initiated the Art Deco movement, and La Garçon style that she proposed was enthusiastically received by the critics. In 1926, she proposed the famous Petite Robe Noire, the little black dress, that assimilated all the concepts carried by the Art Deco movement: functionality, simplicity, and the color black. In the 30s, she enters a sort of creative slump, and she decided to close the Maison in 1939. And although the government asked Chanel to remain open to support the economy of the country during the war, the Second War, but she closed the activity, and despite the fact that the activity was still flourishing, she had 4,000 employees. She produced 28,000 items per year. She owned 10% of the Chanel, Le Parfum Chanel. That was a very lucrative business. And after 15 years of voluntary exile at the periphery, she made this legendary comeback at the age of 71, and then she dies at the age of 88 in 1971. This case confirms what the theory says about the fact that marginal individuals are highly motivated to engage in innovative, in radical behavior. Chanel was an orphan who became the mistress of two wealthy men, and this meant to be the lowest strata of the society at that time. So she was, in a sense, privileged and unconstrained to pioneer a divergent creativity that was based on men's rules and garments. So she challenged the establishment, the core players of the time, deciding to go up against Poiret-Beguilin excesses, the flowing understatements of Vionnet and Lanvin, or the secure rectitude of Worth and Doucet. According to our framework on the core-periphery structure of social fields, peripheral players typically at the margins find many stimuli and are in contact with different perspectives. The austerity of Aubazine inspired her sense of rigor and simplicity, and also her taste for black and white. The world of horses and racetracks that she attended with her first lover, Etienne Balsan, introduced Chanel to the concept of sports, rules, and discipline that later would influence her style. She borrowed elements of upper-class men's sportswear from the attire of her lover. She explicitly stole from the wardrobe of her lovers, and it is said that Boy Capel's sartorial style had influenced her look. And finally, but I would say most importantly, the uniforms, starting from the uniforms worn at the orphanage that, although miserable, conferred a precise role in society. She started believing that a dress should communicate an identity and a role in society. Other uniforms that influenced her creativity were the uniforms used for horse riding that were very functional, that allowed the body's movements. And finally, the eccentric and ultra-feminine uniforms worn by the irregulière, and being herself a kept woman and irregulière, she wanted to differentiate from these women, and so she headed towards a more masculine aesthetic. She struggled for recognition. Professional dressmakers of the time dismissed Chanel as merely a millionaire, and her name was misspelled in fashion magazines. And also, fashion magazine kept proposing for years what represented the dominant aesthetic of the time, so crinolines, pagoda hips, tapered hems, that were revival of the past centuries. Until mid-20s, Chanel was not really considered a famous fashion designer, so she was not a core player. She approached the core in the 20s. So what allowed the transition from this very peripheral origin to the core of the field? She became literally the Queen of Paris in the haute couture. Two mechanisms: the availability of homologous audiences that were receptive and granted Chanel recognition and support for her creativity, and the occurrence of an exogenous shock that subverted the dominant logic in the field of war. The first audience is represented by single individuals who, with different roles, granted recognition to Chanel. Etienne Balsan, Boy Capel, supported her financially and also put her in contact with their network of influential people of the Parisian society. And actresses and society ladies backed Chanel, and they were real gatekeepers, fashion icons in the Belle Époque period, so their taste was very highly regarded. And Gabrielle Dorzia, Cécile Sorel, the Baroness of Rothschild, the society lady Antoinette Bernstein, but most importantly, her friendship with the famous patroness of the art, Misia Godesca-Sert, who introduced Chanel to her network of avant-garde artists, among the others Pablo Picasso, Jean Cocteau, Igor Stravinsky, Henri Matisse, and Sergei Diaghilev, of course. It is said that for 30 years, Chanel was associated with the thoughts, judgments, and tastes of a woman known to have had a share in every artistic activity of her age. The second type of audience is represented by the art movements, in particular the avant-garde and the Art Deco. As Roland Barthes noted, many of Chanel creation evoked the spirit of art movements, and their work can be seen in relation of art. Chanel style synthesized all the predominant element of her time. Simplicity and the abandoning of all the ornamentation characterized all the decorative arts at the time. She developed and also she epitomized a look that reflected the entire modernist movement. Also, Vogue acknowledged a relationship with the art field, and there are several references to the arts in her creations. As an instance, this is the famous little black dress and the reference to the Art Deco. And finally, the First World War unquestionably granted Chanel the supremacy in the field of fashion, in the haute couture. Why? Because Chanel clothes were very suitable for the new lifestyle. Women were emancipating, and the war accelerated this process. Women started working in the industry, and the men were at the front line, and cars, servants, and men were not available anymore. So the life rearranged around women. Chanel said, a world was dying while another was being born. I was there. An opportunity came forward and I took it. I was the same age of the new century, and it was to me that it looked for sartorial expression. There is also a famous quote from the Marquise Boni de Castellane, a notorious dandy fashion personality of the time. He said, women no longer exist. All that's left are the boys created by Chanel, because her style spread during the war. So to conclude, this case highlights the mediating role played by audiences in shaping the recognition of a peripheral creator and her divergent creativity. And in particular, the presence of multiple audiences, heterogeneous audiences, each adopting an idiosyncratic criteria increases the likelihood to appeal at least to one audience. In the case of Chanel faced resistance from peers, and this is consistent with what yesterday Simone presented. It is typical that peers innovators tend to protect the status quo. So they are not open towards something that is radically different, that can challenge their power. But on the contrary, Chanel found immediate rapid recognition from the market, from gatekeepers, and she found financial support. This case also showed that the war created the momentum for change. The war was important, and Chanel modernity appealed rapidly to women, and so the war caused this deep societal change, the new lifestyle and the emancipation of women that corresponded to a revision of the criteria used by women. And women are consumers, and the consumers are an audience, an important audience for a creator. So we can say that there is an impact of macro-level changes on meso-level condition, that is the condition used by the audience, the criteria used by the audience. So to summarize, this picture can help to understand the journey of a peripheral creator from the periphery to the core, with the two enabling mechanisms that allow this transition.
Questions from the floor? Please, Bob.
You argued a compelling case that World War I was a very prime factor in her being able to move into the core of the fashion world. And she moved to the periphery again just before World War II, and then back to the core after World War II. Mm-hmm. Was World War II a similar event that provided an opportunity?
According to what she said World War II would be different from World War I. She made this statement. I don't know, I don't have a precise idea on this, I was not there. But Chanel, according to literature, I mean, the story is longer than this. Typically, when you are in the core, over time, you tend to be more incrementally creative. I mean, you are not anymore a divergent creator because you are pressurized by homogenizing influences. You are the establishment, so it's difficult to create. And Chanel supremacy was also threatened by the creativity of Elsa Schiaparelli. She had relationship with the surrealists. So she was very fanciful, colorful, very different from Chanel. And she was, her presence, she threatened seriously Chanel's creativity. So probably it's not just a matter of the world, it's also a matter of a changed context independently from the world.
Okay, thank you very much again. We move on to the second presentation, which will be delivered by Amelia Purvis. She's studying honors in psychology at the University of South Australia, and she's being supervised by Professor Cropley. She will be speaking about what are the effects of plants in an organizational setting on employee affect and creative behavior. So something which could be considered as a detail, but can turn out to be very important. So Amelia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just trying to get the program to work, so fingers crossed at this point.
I don't want to waste any time, so I'll ask a question to Maria Chiara. Since we cannot start, I'll ask a question. We said that innovators have to face resistance in general, because there is resistance to innovation. Now, if you are a woman innovator, do you face double resistance?
In the first decades of the 20th century, surely, this is
but today it's not a problem anymore. Okay.
Thank you, Giovanni, and thank you everyone for being here today. I feel very fortunate to be surrounded by such great minds, talking about such a fantastic field that I'm only just entering into. Vince Cerf and I were speaking yesterday about inspiration. And even if something doesn't quite work, the fact that it could possibly inspire something else is the main and key point. So what I hope to do is inspire you, if not by my presentation, by the content, then by the tool that I'm using here today. So my research is looking at creative behaviour and affect in an organisational setting. So as David Cropley before introduced Dim Lee's research, mine follows a similar strand. So the aim was to investigate the influence of plantscaping on behaviour, on employee creative behaviour and affect in the workplace. Now, plantscaping is a term used to refer to the installation, management, maintenance and design of plants within a building. So I can tell you now that this is not the creative process. This is, we can think of the creative process as possibly binge eating or random internet surfing, but as we all know, there is a theory with it. So we've spoken earlier today and yesterday about the 4P approach. So the person, the process, the press, and the product. So my focus is on the press. Whilst there are social influences on creativity, we wanted to know what aspects of the physical environment influence creativity. So previous studies have shown that window views, dim lighting, moderate noise, these all are conducive for creativity. We wanted to extend this. What other aspects of the environment could influence creativity? This led me to plantscaping. So plantscaping has captured my attention because of its many psychological benefits. So the biophilia hypothesis, for example, explains that people have this innate connection with nature. Moreover, we have the attention restoration theory. So it explains that plants are able to restore resources such as creativity and affect. So generally, research has supported these theories. They've found that when plants are present, there is an increase in productivity, job satisfaction, well-being, mood, and attitude. What does this all mean? So we know the physical environment influences creativity, and we know that plants restore resources such as creativity and affect. Therefore, what would happen if we put plants into a barren, unenriched environment? Hopefully we should see some pretty interesting results. My hypotheses. So after statistically controlling for age, gender and education, people who have a plant are likely to be more creative, to show higher positive affect, and to show less negative affect than people who receive a plant or the control condition. So our participants were sourced from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, the King William Street office, which is a CBD street, as they adequately represented our population of interest. We had 60 people sign consent forms, however only 38 were included in the final data set. We had 16 people in the treatment group with a mean age of 41 and 22 people in the control group with a mean age of 14. So as many of you are probably familiar, we use the abbreviated Torrance test for adults. And this is an abbreviated version of the Torrance test of creative thinking, one of the most widely used tests of creativity. So I administered the ATTA in a conference room at the Commonwealth Bank. So there are 3 parts to the ATTA. We have 1 verbal component and 2 figural components. And they show appropriate reliability and validity. And it asks, one of the verbal components is, imagine if you could fly without a plane or similar vehicle. What sort of problems would this create? To measure affect, I use the positive and negative affect schedule, or the PANIS. So that was administered online. And it asks the question, to what extent have you felt a certain emotion in the last 2 weeks? And again, it shows appropriate internal consistency. our recruitment. So first we had to recruit a plant supplier because we want to put plants into this environment, and Ambius were only too happy to help out. And then we had to recruit an organisation. So to ensure random sampling, an advertisement was placed in the Green Building Council of Australia, their magazine, their monthly magazine. This was really a great way to recruit because membership to the council demonstrates an interest in environmentally appropriate and conscious practices. The Commonwealth Bank showed an interest. We were very happy that someone showed an interest. And they met all of our inclusion and exclusion criteria, so they were chosen as our organisation of interest. From here, the business development manager recruited internally. So as you can see in the diagram, during the pre-plants phase, we had both the controlling treatment groups complete the ATTA and the PANAS. And then in week 1, we had the plants introduced to the treatment group. So this is a 50 centimetre tall syngonium plant in a white pot. So as you can see, they're in place here. And then in the 3rd week, we again had everyone complete the ATTA and the survey monkey. So the PANAS was using the survey monkey. So for those scientists of you out there, we had the independent variable, which is the potted plants, which was manipulated, either the presence or absence, to determine the influence on our dependent variables, creative behaviour, positive affect, and negative affect. It was a mixed quasi-experimental design. It was quasi-experimental because it's not appropriate to randomly allocate people in an office environment to the desk that I would like them to sit at. What did we find? So this is creativity. So as you can see in the green, we had our plant condition. In the blue, we had our control condition. So the hypothesis was that people within the plant condition would be more creative than people in the no plant condition. As you can see, creativity increased. So it's consistent with our hypothesis, but it wasn't statistically significant. So what we can say is that creativity scores, they didn't differ significantly across the 2 times for either plant condition. This brings us to positive affect. So what you can see again, in the green, the plant condition, in the blue, the no plant condition. Our hypothesis, people in the plant condition will show higher positive affect, and this is exactly what we found. So we found that there was a significant interaction effect, a large effect size, and appropriate power. So what we can say is that for the participants in the plant condition, they demonstrated significantly higher positive affect at time 2 than they did at time 1. Our 3rd hypothesis, negative affect to decrease for the plant condition. Again, plant condition in the green, no plant condition in the blue, and there were no statistically significant results. So negative affect didn't differ across the time for either plant condition. What does this all mean? So results can be interpreted to indicate people in a commercial working office are more interested, they're excited, they're enthusiastic, and they're more active after they have a plant than before they had the plant. These results can be substantiated by the comments we received from people. So I enjoyed having Brooke, they named their plant. So I enjoyed having Brooke, my plant, on my desk. To have something natural in an essentially sterile environment was enjoyable, relaxing almost. Cynthia, another plant who's been named, Cynthia has adjusted well to sitting on my desk. She has grown quite a bit in the last 3 weeks, and I enjoy having her around. Surprisingly, a lot of them received girls' names, so maybe that's another study that can be done. How does this relate to theory and add to past findings? So there are many things which influence creativity, as we've been discussing these last few days. We've got the person, the process, the press, which all contribute to the final product. So focusing on one aspect of the physical press may not have been enough to elicit a strong change in such a complex structure. In regards to positive affects, results provide initial support for the theory that plants should store resources such as positive affect. Understanding the results in terms of the biophilia and attention restoration theory, it could be said that people in a barren, unenriched environment have been recharged by the presence of plants. In regards to the physical environment on creativity, the results have been mixed. As we can see in this sample, plants have not had significant influence, although as you saw, they were consistent with our hypothesis. In regards to the plants, research adds to and extends what is known, as we have been able to validate past findings of laboratory studies with student samples in a working commercial office with employees. So we have the major strengths and limitations of the study. So the strength was that it was conducted with a working as opposed to a laboratory environment with office employees as opposed to students. So the working environment meant that they were able to remain in the same physical and social environment. We weren't removing them and placing them into a foreign environment and asking them to complete foreign tests. Also, office employees were our population of interest. So therefore, we have greater generalizability and external validity than studies with student samples wanting to apply these same results to office workers. A limitation was that we did not have enough power. So the initial power calculation was 64 participants for a large effect, however we only had 38. So we can't be certain whether results demonstrated that there was no relationship between plants and creativity, or whether we didn't have sufficient power to detect a change. Where to from here? I think it would be really interesting to run with the idea that plants work to restore resources like creativity. Therefore, instead of placing plants on people's desk, placing in a space where they go for a breather. So you could place them in a breakout space, for example, or a similar sort of space. People would get a chance to step away from their work and venture into a different environment. So my suggestion is to introduce plants into breakout spaces to investigate whether this provides the appropriate means to restore resources. Now I have to thank Associate Professor David Cropley as my supervisor, and also Maureen Dollard, also Graham Amini from Ambius, who are fantastic with our plants, and Mark Spencer from the Commonwealth Bank. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And we open the floor for questions. Please.
Just two quick questions. The first one is, was the subject blind to the hypothesis of this experiment? Were the participants, were they blind to the hypothesis of the experiment? And the second question is about the
Let
control.
me answer the first one before I forget.
Sorry.
Okay, so initially the idea was that they would be blind. So we had a story conducted, and it was passed through ethics that we were going to explain that the creativity tests were for research, and that the plants were being introduced as a HR initiative. So human resources would introduce the plants, and that would be completely separate. So as I mentioned, the business development manager was my connection into the organisation, and he recruited participants. And I found out after he had recruited the participants that he hadn't followed through with that story. So he had explained to the group that this student was coming in and conducting creativity research and was going to give people a plant and see what happens. So that threw that a little bit, but in saying that, what had happened was he had associated it with creativity, but not with affect. So they were aware that the plants were somehow related to the creativity research, but they didn't know that they were related to the affect. So our affect results have remained, although they were aware of the creativity side of things. And your second question?
Okay. Second question is about the control group. I think maybe they should have something as well, like a plastic plant maybe, or something like that.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. So at the beginning of the research, we were considering whether we would give them magazines, as previous researchers compared a plant group with a magazine group. But within the amount of things that influence creativity, we thought if you have a magazine rack, people could be influenced by the images of the magazines. And what else could influence if we gave them a particular coloured item with the colour influence? So this was a dilemma for us, and we thought it was better to remain stable and to not provide anything than to have the possibility of something else influencing it that we couldn't control for. But a wonderful question, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I think it was very unusual that they started to give the plants names. Could you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So with the groups, so we had two levels of the building basically. So we had level 8 and level 3, so a perfect control and treatment group. Within level 8, they had a couple of different rooms or areas, and everyone in one of the groups named their plant, and it was a group of men. So, and they all received female names. And a couple of the other people had named their plants as well, but they seemed quite attached to the plants. So when I went in on the 3rd week, people would say, oh, it has a new shoot and it has a new this, and I've been feeding it and looking after it. And one gentleman explained that he was sharing his coffee with his plants. So they developed quite a relationship with these plants, even though we had the plant supplier care for the plants. So we wanted to control for that. So the plant supplier cared for the plants and maintained the plants. So there wasn't that sort of nurturing side to it as well, but that was developed. So people named their plants. They were focused on, and could tell me how much they'd grown and developed, and they were sharing a real relationship with it. And this was a bit of an issue because at the end, the idea was that we would remove the plants because we'd borrowed them essentially from the plant supplier. And luckily, Ambius, the plant supplier, had said, no, you can keep the plants. And so there was great joy and celebration, and everyone was very happy that they got to keep their own plants. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, a very short question. Did participants have to be requested watering the plant every day?
Mm-hmm. So as I was saying, Ambius, the plant supplier, they were involved. They were responsible for caring for the plant.
Said how many times per day, and always every day be request to pump watering that.
Mm-hmm. So with this style of plant that we had, it's a syngonium. So it's fairly self-regulating and self-caring. So the plant supplier only came in one time during the experiment, and that was something that we wanted to control for. We didn't want to have a stranger coming in and out of their building and caring for the plant. So they cared for it one time. They maintained it and checked up on and checked on it. Yeah, so the participants were paying attention to the plant, but they weren't caring for them. That was external.
I mean, in this case, I'm curious about the relationship with the plant, or how they created to increase their creativity.
I think we have to take that discussion offline because otherwise it would be too long. But you stimulate a lot of interest, so okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so we move on to the 3rd presentation. That will be delivered by Yin Lin. She's from Taiwan, and she has a bachelor in psychology and a master's in human resources management. Very interesting. She worked for 2 years in China in startup companies. That must have been quite an experience. Now she's working for her PhD, again in human resources management in Taiwan. And she will continue on the topic of the work environment, how to support creativity. So please.
Thank you. So my name is Sue, and I have a really, I'm really thrilled to be here, and my research is really similar to the previous talk. So I hope my research will contribute to the dialogue. So this is about how physical work environment supports creativity, and we also look at the role of positive and negative effect. And I think we've been talking about this like over and over again today and yesterday. So most scholars find positive effect more important in keeping creativity or stimulating creativity, and this is also our finding. So, does it work? Okay. Yeah, so if we think about office spaces or office for knowledge workers, this is probably a typical office. So you have your own desk, your computer and everything. But right now, the nature of work and office environments are really, really, really changing. Sorry, what is it? We were laughing about a typical office. Yeah, or maybe this is not typical because you have, yeah, because you might have, you have this, in this office you have a very nice view, and it's probably, yeah, I didn't design this office. It's a picture I found on the internet. So, yeah, as yesterday, Vince Cerf talked about the Google office. It looks like a giant daycare center. This is one of the Google offices, and yeah, offices are really changing, and it's becoming more and more creative. And like, if you look at all these pictures, like, I would like to work in some offices like looks like a playground or provide me with a lot of resource, a lot of food, for example. So the question behind this research is, so as the offices are really evolving and changing, all these cool designs, is it really necessary? Or we'll just go back to the typical office where we have our own tables and everybody works in front of his own desk? So let's look at the why it is important. Because for organizations, because I come from human resource management, so in organizations today, you really need to be creative because the competition is very intense. If you don't be creative or if you don't be innovative, you'll be out of the game very soon. So, and also, the cost for resources in organizations, maybe the number one cost is human resource because you have to pay all these people for training, for educating, or to support your human resource. But the second runner-up is the physical and not really the physical environment, but the physical resources you have to provide these people. So if this is taking a lot of, if this is the second main cost for organizations, we really have to pay attention to it. And then it comes to the nature of requirements of the work. So previously, so work environments have to support efficiency or effectiveness of our work outcomes. But nowadays, it's really changing to productivity, and very recent, it's really creativity and innovation. So lastly, the physical environment may affect creativity in the workplace, but up to date, not a lot of research is related to how the physical environment stimulates creativity for office workers or knowledge workers. So that brings us to the theoretical framework. I guess Professor Hennessy showed us, this is like a simplified version of this graph of the componential theory of creativity. So you have, in this part, you have the work environment as one of the components. That contributes to the whole creativity model. But the work environment here, it's really more related to the social environment. Just like Zoe talked about in the opening remarks, if we're sitting next to an employee who is very productive, maybe I become more productive because of the social encounters and the social competition. Like I have certain pressure because he's doing really good and I have to do good too. So that's the social part of the creativity that was also one of the talks yesterday. But what about the physical part if we take the social interactions and all the other influences of creativity out? What can we learn from the the physical environment? So this is another framework proposed by Professor Lubart, and he's also here today. The multivariate approach, we heard about it yesterday. So the elements that really contributes to creative product is the conative, cognitive, emotional, and environmental factors. So to have a theoretical base of my research, I picked the emotional and environmental factors that affects creativity. Because one problem we face is it's very difficult to really frame how the physical environment stimulates an individual, and it's difficult to understand how it really works. So we included the emotional factors or the effect, positive and negative effect. Together we can look at how these factors interact with each other. So that brings us to the model of this research. So we look at how physical work environment influences office workers, specifically knowledge workers. And we look at how they feel inside their work environment or their office. And then we ask them to report how creative they feel while they're working. So this is some backgrounds related to the physical work environment. So we define the work environment as the space allocated for work. Previous studies have divided the physical work environment as physical structure, physical stimuli, and symbolic artifacts. Because some people might design or decorate their own workplace with some artifacts or some decorations to show their identity for their workplace. And it's also a factor that affects how you work. And from McCoy, 2005, he divided the physical work environment into 5 elements. The first one is spatial organization. The second one is architectonic details. The third one is views. So a stream of research is related to if you have a window view, you can be more productive or you feel more relaxed while you're working. And the fourth one is resource. So as I think I remember from a talk this morning, office workers, they're always complaining about their internet speed. So probably the resources, like if you have computers, if you have copy machines, food, fast speed wireless, that all contributes to the resource provided to your workplace. And the last one is ambient conditions. How do you feel the environment? Is it providing you enough space, or is it providing you all the area that you need for work? So there are also other influences of the physical work environment. For example, if you have a very like a playground environment, that really shows your innovative culture for your organization. But however, some open plan offices also, like employees reported there are a lot of distractions because all the interactions or all the noise is really distracting how you work. It promotes social interactions, which is good for creativity, and sometimes affects your mood, satisfaction, and performance. So altogether, we'd like to understand how the physical work environment really influenced their creativity and their mood. So for the relationship between mood and creativity, there's 2 sides of the debate. So one stream of research thinks positive mood facilitates creative problem solving and it's good for creativity. But some other organization scholars think negative mood can work as a motivation. So if you're unsatisfied with something, you really try harder to make improvements and to be creative. So we didn't have an assumption of what is better. So we also administered our questionnaire with positive mood and negative mood. So in a slightly different approach from the previous research, I used the job effect scale because it has 20 items, both positive and negative, but it has a different axis. It's high activation and low activation. So there are 4 dimensions. 4 dimensions in the whole scale. And creativity is measured through the creativity behavior items developed by Zoe and George. It's 13 items. So the participants were asked to rate their perceptions to their work environment. For the mood part, the job effect scale, they are asked to evaluate how do they feel while they're working in the current work environment for the past week. Then they rate their own creativity behavior according to the questionnaire. So our participants, we send questionnaires to 164. We had 164 valid responses. So 57% were female, and their mean age is 26 to 30 years old. The mean tenure is 45.24 months. And their background, mostly they're above university and above. So this is the correlation results. But basically, negative effect is negatively correlated with creativity, and positive effect is positively correlated with creativity behavior. So if we look at the regression analysis, so physical work environment can predict creativity behavior because it has a positive correlation. So the positive mood, so now you see the 4 different dimensions of the job affect scale. So we have the positive mood is enthusiasm and relaxed. So that represents high activated mood and low activation mood. In the negative, sorry, I think this is wrong. This is like negative mood. Okay, nervousness and fatigue. So negative mood cannot predict creativity behavior, but positive mood it significantly predicts creativity behavior. So if you look at relative importance of how these 4 kinds of mood influence creativity behavior, relaxed comes the first, then it's enthusiasm, but negative mood it's not related to creativity behavior. I have 2 minutes. Okay, I'm almost finishing. So next we look at the mediating effects. So the results show that relaxed mood has better effects in mediating the relationship between work environment and creative performance. So the findings, what does this research tell us? We think that good physical environment contributes to creative performance. If we take out all other influences of creativity, if we just only look at how does the physical work environment supports creativity, it helps sustain creativity in a good way, and it is best manifest through the mood that is relaxed. So if your employees feel more relaxed in their work environment, they might show better creativity or they have better creativity performance. So this is, lastly, the limitations and suggestions. So because the measurements are all done objective measures, because the participants, they rate their own mood and their own creativity. But from previous research, like if supervisor ratings are highly correlated with self-report creativity, but we think that if we do a more longitudinal or experiment design like the previous research, we might have better findings of how the work environment supports creativity. So this is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. So we open for questions. Questions from the floor. I have a question for you, which is related to the fact that when we talk about mood, it's something that it will not be constant before and after the creative activity. Because when you understand something, you smile. When you have an intuition, you laugh. When you have eureka moment, you're so happy. So that your mood will change. So we're always talking about the pre-creative thinking mood, I guess, when you talk about your presentation.
Yeah, because we all change our moods or our mood states all the time. So that's why in this research we asked the participants to rate, like in general in the past week, how do you feel while you're working in this place? But I do know some research, like if you bring your mood state to the office every day, every morning you feel different. Maybe you had a bad day, you woke up at the wrong side of the bed, you bring the negative emotion to work. It also affects your productivity. So this is also a limitation, but we'll try to just to make it clear for the participants to rate their mood.
Just an observation, really. I like the fact that you also considered what the goal of the workplace is, because the fact is that if you're doing research like this in a supermarket, the people on the checkout probably don't need to be creative, so it's not an issue. I just like the fact that you're also considering what is the goal of the organization. Is it simply to be more productive, or is it that they need to be more creative? So I liked that aspect of what you did as well.
Yeah, but the questionnaires are sent to office workers, office occupiers, so most of them are knowledge workers. So this also in a certain field. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. Okay, we have presented the young scholars from the Marconi Society, but now we have a speech from another young scholar because Xu Ming is a President's Research Scholar from Singapore, currently a fourth-year honors undergraduate student at Nanyang Technological University. And this paper he presents is actually a paper, a project that he developed during the third year of his bachelor. So please, you have the floor. Turn on the microphone again.
Dear all, I feel privileged and humbled to present my research to you today. Basically, it's my modest attempt at trying to develop an assessment of creativity. Some of my thoughts have changed, but I'll just present what was done. This is, after all, just a pilot study. Using Rhodes' 1961 widely acknowledged four-piece model, covered by several speakers in this conference, creativity is a dynamic phenomenon comprising of four interactive components: person, process, product, and press. It is this multifaceted nature of creativity that makes assessing creativity complex and difficult. Flaws are present in every type of creative assessment. Assessing creativity is still a work in progress. In the creativity literature, divergent thinking, for example, think of how many ways you could use a chair, think of how many ways you could use a paper, is the most extensively used method to measure creativity. Divergent thinking tests have nonetheless been criticized for their poor ecological and predictive validity with low correlations to real-world performance. The independent research project, which I undertook a year before when I was a second-year undergrad, used the widely established and cited Wallace and Kogan's creativity test example. Think of as many round objects as possible as a creative measure. I was not too happy with that test being an indicator of creativity, especially for adults. Hence, in the following pilot study, I'm hoping to improve on conventional divergent thinking tasks by using more functional and practical elements. Specifically, the proposed approach is to employ real-world situations to assess creative potentials. Hopefully, this will give us better ecological and predictive validity to real-world performance as compared to conventional divergent thinking creative tasks. In particular, we look at relational creativity, communication creativity, and workplace creativity. Relating with others, effectively bringing across your ideas, and dealing with conflicting ones at the workplace are practically useful and can be thought of as components of the broad domain of self-everyday creativity proposed by Kaufman 2012. Method. 54 undergrads participated in this pilot study, 26 first-year undergrads and 28 fourth-year undergrads. All participants were given the below 3 creative assessments to complete in a randomized order: the Ranko Ideational Behavior Task Scale, RIBS, the Creative Personality Scale, CPS, the Bias Test of Creativity, BTC. The BTC is the proposed new assessment of creativity, consisting of 6 self-rating questions on a 7-point scale and 3 situational task questions. 3 dimensions: relational creativity, communication creativity, and workplace creativity are explored. Examples of self-rating questions are as such. Examples of situational task questions include: imagine a hypothetical situation where you're late for an important work meeting by 2 hours. Listen and describe, giving details if necessary, feasible and justifiable reasons to account for your late coming so that you will not be judged negatively. Other examples of self-rating questions used are as such. Other examples of situational task questions include: your 60-year-old mom is not in good health and seems to have lost a sparkle. Listen and describe, giving details as necessary, useful and novel ways to cheer her up. Independence Day is approaching. Your country has decided to produce advertisement videos ranging from 20 seconds to 3 minutes to promote love and pride towards one's nation. Listen and describe, giving details if necessary, possible approaches for the content of these advertisement videos. Lastly, all participants completed a background questionnaire. The first-year undergrads were required to input their GCE advanced level general paper and mathematics grades, while the fourth-year undergrads were required to input their current CGPA. Scoring. Creative performance in the BTC was judged by 3 raters, 2 males, 1 female. For each situational task question, after reading all responses and indicating at least 20 responses that they like, raters are to independently select 10 of the most novel and useful responses, From the selected responses, they are to choose 3 responses that wow them. A wow response signifies that response to be extremely creative, with standout novelty and usefulness as compared to the other responses. For example, when you're late for work by 2 hours critically, rip off half of your sleeve and cry you were attacked by a thug who robbed your wallet and handphone, was given a wow rating by 2 raters. Based on their responses in each of the 3 situational task questions, participants are then given a creative performance score in each of the 3 domains using a 6-point level system. Levels 1 and 2 are differentiated based on the numbers of ideas generated. A general guideline of having approximately 15% of the pooled participants in level 1, 25% of the pooled participants in level 2, 30% in level 3, 30% in level 4, 10% in level 5, and 5% in level 6 was followed. Results. Inter-rater reliability was strongly significant. There was a good distribution of creative performance. The creative performance component of the BTC had significant correlations within each situational task question and with the overall creative performance, suggesting the 3 situational task questions can be assessing the different facets of creativity proposed: relational, communication, and workplace. The CPS and RIBS are established indicators of creativity in the literature. Concurrent validity is observed as the self-ratings component of the BTC significantly correlated with self-ratings of the CPS and RIBS. Discriminant validity is observed as all items of the BTC did not significantly relate to language, reasoning, and academic ability measured by A-level GP grade, A-level mathematics grade, and CGPA respectively, suggesting creativity assessed in each item of the BTC to be of a separate cognitive ability. Discussion. In the current study, we took a functional approach to measure contextual creativity. Functional everyday creativity is being investigated by looking at relational creativity, communication creativity, and workplace creativity. However, to validate the existence of these 3 constructs of functional creativity, substantially more confirmatory evidence are required, such as seeking to establish predictive validity, test-retest reliability, and inter-item reliability with more test items. The creative performance in the workplace task question significantly correlated with the workplace creativity self-rating component of the BTC. No significant correlation, though, in the creative performance of the relational and communication creative task questions with the corresponding relational and communication creativity self-ratings is a limitation of this pilot. We need to formulate the relational and communication creativity constructs in greater detail, examining and reviewing the test items thoroughly. Refinement of the self-rating questions and the situational task questions might be necessary. Unlike previous work, number of different ideas generated is not a main factor in the proposed scoring method. Only ideas that are novel and appropriate to the context are rewarded. This is contrasted with creativity scoring in most divergent thinking tests, example TTCT and WKCT, which uses quantity of ideas, fluency, quantity of categorical ideas generated, flexibility, and statistical infrequencies, uniqueness, as indexes of creativity. We believe that uniqueness and quantity of ideas matter, but the quality of ideas matter more in the creative assessment, since not all responses recorded are novel and appropriate to the context. Sternberg and Lubart, 1996, had made the similar argument that fluency, flexibility, and uniqueness scores fail to capture the concept of creativity when any bizarre or inappropriate idea is considered as creative in conventional DT assessments. Chen et al. 2011 argued that construct validity of creativity is substantially compromised when traditional DT tests do not include the critical criterion of appropriateness in its assessment. We could also explore employing a more objective method for the scoring. So take, for example, the late coming task question. Participants can receive a novelty score of 1 to 5 based on coded statistical frequency, and receive a utility score of 1 to 5 based on a checklist of coded requirements. Example, is your response 1 feasible, meaning it is appropriate and can happen? 2, justifiable, meaning it is not difficult to verify? 3, boss does not think negatively of you, meaning the reason does not make you sound irresponsible? 4, sufficiently take into account the lack of correspondence for 2 hours. So if a response has accomplished these 4 elements, a utility score of 5 will be awarded, whereas 3 elements will receive a utility score of 2, utility score of 4, 2 elements, utility score of 3, 1 element, utility score of 2, 0 elements, utility score of 1. And then overall creativity score will be calculated by the best combination of novelty score plus utility score based on the definition that creativity is the generation of ideas that are both novel and useful. I have to include this last slide to acknowledge the funding support I received. And with that, that's all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Open the door. Yeah, please.
Xiuming, how did you select your judges? What were their qualifications of the judges?
Because we're assessing everyday creativity, our judges were undergrad students.
Okay.
One of it was me, 2 others were my friends, but I wanted to ensure that there was an opposite gender. So.
And did you do any training or
No,
explain to them
yeah.
what your concept of creativity was?
Yes, I had a coding manual, which I give them like specific instructions to only select ideas. There's a process. First, you have to read through all responses and then select, see what you like, and then after that, select like of those you like, which do you like more, and then subsequently what wows you like. But there was very strong inter-rater reliability, because when it's creative, you just know it. Like, for example, for the ways to cheer up your mom, administer laughing gas, for example, it just stands out, and you can see that all raters like it at least minimally. Yeah.
Okay, please.
Those raters, were they instructed to rate the responses, the situational task responses, relative to one another? In other words, did you have a rule that at least one of those responses should get a really high creativity rating and one should get a really low creativity rating? Or were they not instructed to rate them relative to one another? Were they just rating them against some epitome of creativity they might hold?
They were instructed to rate it based on the relative responses of all the other responses.
Did I understand well? So there was a score for innovation and a score for utility?
This is in my, this slide was not done because I was only presenting, all the slides prior was what was done. I was only presenting what some of my thoughts have changed since I've done it. So in hindsight, maybe I will use this. Yeah, future work, it's just future.
Okay, and you know already how you want to evaluate like novelty and utility?
For example, the late coming task question, novelty score of 1 to 5 will be based on the coded statistical frequency because as I'm looking at all those responses, I kind of get a general picture. For example, people, if they say they are diarrhea, I was late because I had diarrhea, immediately I give him a score of 1 because there's no novelty to it. But it takes time to come up with a statistical coded frequency manual.
And utility?
Yeah. Utility will be based on utility score will be based on a checklist of coded requirements. Example, for the late coming task question, is your response first feasible, meaning it is appropriate and can happen. 2, justifiable, meaning it is not difficult to verify. 3, boss does not think of you negatively, meaning the reason does not make you sound irresponsible. And 4, sufficiently takes into account the lack of correspondence for 2 hours. So if a response has accomplished these 4 elements, a utility score of 5 will be awarded, whereas 3 elements will receive a utility score of 4. Basically, some responses, you could see that it has 3 elements to it being a useful reason for the context. This response is useful to the context, but not exactly useful because it fails to take into account the lack of correspondence for 2 hours. So I just say, I broke my shoe, so I was late, for example, but it does not, okay, I've done this a long time ago. I kind of forgot what were the typical responses.
Could you just remind me of point 3 and point 4, because I could not take note of.
Okay, but we can do that offline, please. So, I mean, for a pilot project in bachelor level, this is a great work. You have touched upon some very delicate questions, as you've seen from the questions in the floor. So keep going with this very good work, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now it's time to close the session with a paper by Guillaume Fürst and Todd Lubart, again on measuring creativity, assessment by consensus and divergent thinking tasks. Guillaume was working for his PhD from the University of Geneva. He received the PhD in 2012, and now is collaborating with Todd Lubart in Paris. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, so this presentation is about the measurement of creativity, in particular using the consensual assessment technique, divergent thinking tasks, and also some questionnaires. So I'm going to follow a very uncreative plan in this presentation, starting with theory, then methods and objective and samples and so on, then results, and then conclusion, of course. I have 2 slides about very general things that we have seen already like many times today, so I'm going to go quickly on this one. So this is the classic distinction between person, process, and product. I just wanted to say that we can look in further details in each box. For instance, for the person component, you can look in further details in the cognitive aspect or affective aspect, as we have seen. And same for process and products. And also, another thing you can do is look at the interest, activities, or achievement of persons. So we have seen measurement of achievement many times, or at least several times today. And I'm going to present also as well. So these 3 and products. So mainly the presentation is about this part of the model, which is not really a model anyway, by the way. But well. And of course the environment, which I'm not going to talk about it very much here. And last thing important, the omnipresence of the role of novelty or originality and quality or relevance, to speak of creative products. We will come back to that later. Two additional distinctions is the one first about the level of creativities. I like this distinction in four levels. From mini C, which is very micro kind of creativity involved in learning. You have small c, which is everyday creativity, pro C, which is creativity at a professional level, and big C, which is the classical, historic, very eminent creativity. And arguably, these levels are connected. And second distinction is about domains. Basically, you can distinguish between art and science, and then go in further distinction, which I won't do here. I just want to emphasize that this study is going to be mainly about artistic domains. And arguably, also domains are also correlated, or at least to some extent. So when you measure creativity, of course, you can assess all these components. For instance, you can assess personality variables or cognitive abilities which are related to creativity, or you can be interested in the whole creative process, or try to measure some cognitive abilities related to creativities. There are, of course, some kind of overlap here, because cognitive abilities, of course, are part of the person variables. So just in passing, well, it's not the main point, actually, so I try not to digress too much, since it's a bit late already. And the presentation here is going to be about, as I mentioned earlier, about product, using divergent thinking tasks and consensual assessment technique, and using questionnaires as well. So this is a table which compares 3 main methods that I use in these studies. The first one is the consensual assessment technique, which is generally considered as the golden standard of the creativity assessment. So it's a very good measure. It's really assess creativity, and unfortunately, it has a very high cost. So you need a lot of raters. You need many times. So you can't do large-scale study. Well, it's difficult to do large-scale study using that. The other one is the divergent thinking tasks, which have relatively low cost, though some scoring methods can be quite costly as well. And one drawback is that it's not directly assessing creativity, but more some cognitive abilities related to creativity. And last, the questionnaires, which are very good because their cost is very low, and they arguably bring additional information that is not present using this method. But there is a risk of validity issues, and it's very indirect measures. For instance, people can lie, and you won't see anything. So maybe using just that, it's a bit dangerous. So in sum, the idea here is that there is no perfect methods, and maybe a good idea would be to combine these different methods in combination of these. So that's what I try to do here. So as I mentioned earlier, this is about small c creativity, and this is about artistic domains. The variable of interest are some actual creative performance based on divergent thinking tasks, and also I used a consensual assessment technique based on these tasks. I'll describe it later in further details. And the questionnaires are the second set of variables of interest here. Basically, the hypotheses are that these tasks should correlate at least slightly, since they're supposed to measure the same thing, creativity. We expect domain difference, so we don't expect, obviously, one correlation, but at least it should correlate to some extent. About the questionnaires, we expect that interests are quite strongly correlated, but achievements are not necessarily. So you can have various interests, but it's harder to have various very high level of achievement in various disciplines. And last, two sets of variables should be correlated as well for the same reasons. If you assess creativity, it should have, these measures should have validity, and they should correlate positively. So the task, sample before, sorry. So it was 150 person, 82% female, of mean age of 22 years. The tasks were three tasks. The cardboard boxes, which is an original task from Torrance, a very old and respectable task. The second one, the two others are from Epoch, a test that have been developed by Todd Lubart in the University of Paris. And the short story is about people have to invent an end to a story. So we give us a beginning of a story, and people have to invent different ends to this story. And drawing, they have to do various drawing using this basic shape. All three tasks were unlimited in time, and participants get explicit instruction about give maximum number possible of ID, and also explicit instruction about being creative, or trying to be creative at least. This task was evaluated by 6 raters. So there was 3 expert raters, which were creativity researcher, and 3 peers raters, so novices raters. These evaluations were given on a 1 to 7 point scale, and all raters received also quite detailed instruction about how to rate these tasks. In particular, they should consider both novelty and quality, which is were defined here as the ID should fit the constraint of the task. So, for instance, for drawing, this shape should be obvious in the drawing. If you can't find this shape in the drawing, so it would consider not very high quality. And other scores, I won't speak about those one very much, but there was fluency score and self-rating also. And once more, the questionnaires. as I mentioned, and there were four domains: visual art, music, writing, and drama. There were 11 questions, same question for each times, and I'm gonna speak in further details of it soon. So one important consideration about the time cost of all these tasks. Generally, participants take about up to 20 minutes. Some just take 5 minutes or even 1 minute to do it, but some of them takes up to 20 minutes in each task. So if you pass 3 tasks, it can be possibly 1 hour, which is already quite long for a study. So if you have 1 hour, you can hardly put additional variables in your design. So maybe it may be a problem. And second thing, participant gave about 10 IDs in each task. So if you want to rate all these IDs in all these tasks, it's going to be a huge amount of IDs, and you're going to get to find raters which agree to rate about 4,000 or 5,000 ID, which is very difficult. So one possible method for saving time, well, at least 2. The first one is to use plan missing data design. So the basic idea is that everybody is not going to take all the tasks. So for instance, participant 1 is not going to do this one, participant 2 is going to do the second one, and so on and so forth. So you divide the costs here, 30% less than if everybody does everything. Second thing, using the same ID, each rater doesn't rate each ID. So the same ratio is used here. The rater are going to rate only 2/3 of the IDs. And last thing, participants have to choose what they think they are their 2 best IDs. So not all IDs are rated, but only 2 for each task. So using this marvelous cunning plan, the numbers of total ID drops down to only 400 IDs, which is still a lot, but doable. And a negative consequence is that the lowering of statistical power. So in that case, instead of having 150% to estimate each correlation, we're going to have only 50. But anyway, it's going to be sufficient since with this kind of, with 50% correlation, about 0.30 is going to be significant. So I considered it enough, at least. This is some further details I'm going to pass very quickly just to explain, have a visual feeling of the experts not rating all IDs. The basic idea is that for each task, 66% of IDs are rated. So we can come back further on it if you want to later. Results now. For each task, I fit a structural equation model. The same for each task. So we got ID 1, ID 2. These are at the bottom. Whoa. These are all the raters. And for this task, for instance, we can see that these numbers can be interpreted as correlation. So a number of 1 would be perfect correlation. And this is the latent variable. So the idea is that we estimate this latent variable using all the judge raters here. If all indices were 1, this would mean that every raters were in very, very strong agreement. So we have here figures about 0.6, 0.7, 0.5. So it means that it's quite well. So there's quite a good amount of agreement between the raters. Figures are almost the same in the for the 2 IDs, and the 2 IDs are correlated, midly correlating. 2 minutes, quite sorry. Same thing for story, basically same results. Same thing for drawing, basically same results. You can feel the speed now. Now the correlation between the tasks. So now the IDs for each task have been put together, and we are looking at correlation between the tasks. So boxes is fairly correlated with the story task, and drawing is not correlated with the 2 others. So it would be in favor of domain specificity. About the questionnaires, I'm going to put 2 tables at once. basically is that interest across all the domains are correlated about 0.30, 0.40, and activity and achievement are much less correlated. I do not print the details here, but the correlation are lower. And last, correlation between the tasks and the domains and the questionnaires. So boxes, which is supposed to be a very good task, does not correlate it very much with domains, which potentially is problematic. Story is very good task, apparently, because it's very high, while sometimes highly, sometimes moderately correlated with questionnaires, and drawing is mixed results for this task. So summary and discussion, for the tasks, the idea is that we can drop down the cost of these tasks as they are usually used. It's possible to achieve acceptable reliability with a few raters, and novices raters are also as much reliable as expert raters. And we have some evidence both for domain dependence and for domain independence. For the questionnaires, interests are correlated, activities and achievement are not, or at least less. And in the end, tasks and questionnaires, correlation are positive, but overall they are quite weak. So there is no strong correlation between tasks and questionnaires. So I'll come back to this. Basically, the idea is that we have these questionnaires that predict themselves together quite well. Interest and tasks are correlated together. And in conclusion, we can say that obviously creativity is a complex construct, but yet measurable. But since variables are not very strongly correlated, these results suggest that we should use quite an amount of different methods to assess creativity. So using this method, it could be done at reasonable cost. And of course, it can be extended, I think, to other kind of creativity, be it other domain or other levels. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, questions from the floor? Please, Christian.
Yes, I would have a question about the structural model that you showed. Could you maybe show it again?
Well, which one?
Yeah, any of one. What does P1 and P2 represent here?
It's the peer rater. So
okay.
E1 is expert 1, expert 2, and so on, and peer 1, peer 2.
Okay, and idea 1 and idea 2, does it refer to the same person?
Yeah.
Okay. And this regression weights in the middle, to what do they refer?
You mean these?
0.55.
They are the loadings of this. I've been very lazy on this one. This should be 0.5. Try to be precise. This should be this. This should be there. This is the loadings of the factors.
Okay.
And many thanks to Bob and Zhao for opening the session, and to all of you for participating to the second day, which was very, very intense. A lot of ideas flowing. And have a good evening. This is the free evening for the conference. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.